Hello everyone, Lewis from Scrubwood Studios here doing another Q&A because it's about all I've got time for at the moment. Life is quite busy. Um, but hey, it's festive season, so we got our boy Tinselsaurus in the back. Um, and some of these other figures which are semi-random, or some of them I've put out here because been asked questions that relate to them. Um, Not much more really to say. I'm like so rusty on this. I'm just rambling. Most of these questions are from the community post I put up on YouTube for you guys, but I'm gonna start with a few from Paleopat on Discord just because he left them there and he didn't leave them on the community post. So I'm just gonna quickly cover those before we get on to the main bulk of the questions. So, if there was any, this is his first question. If there was any season you wish you did differently, it says what reason would it be, but I assume what season would it be? What season would it be? I'm not going to talk about Series 4 yet, just because it's not done. So I'll temporarily exclude that. There's things about all of them which I kind of wish I'd done differently. Series 1, um, I think I could have, set out some of the locations in PV better beforehand, like the desert in particular, I've said multiple times, has aged pretty poorly. Or at least I could have leaned into it being a man-made area. Um, and I think the whole Hatchet storyline from that season, even though Hatchet was kind of an early fan favorite, the reality is I think that storyline, even though it's all right, but it doesn't really tie into anything else other than technically introducing the sauropods before they are relevant to the sort of Gigabyte plotline. The only series I really wouldn't change much with is Series 2. I think maybe I could have fleshed out Kai and Diane's sort of story a bit more. Like maybe if I'd had one or two more episodes, I could have done that. And like saved Suration for a bit later on in the series. But I think that's the series I would change the least with. And it's the one I think I'm overall most happy with. Series 3, I've had a lot of criticism from Python in particular about the final battle. And about it not giving Suration good payoff, but quite frankly, I don't think he's one to talk, given that, like, most of the endings in Songbird had zero payoff whatsoever. That was probably a bit mean, but seriously, I think, are very different writers in terms of endings. And I do see his point about, like, maybe realistically. I think my biggest problem with Series 3 in general, I think, is probably just the fact that I was kind of adding figures and stuff because I wanted to use them. Like Tango, even though I really like Tango's character, especially in Series 4, his Series 3 plotline kind of mostly I feel like I could have cut him out and just had Suration kill the Spinosaurus Torvus, and realistically not much would change. And I think I killed, even though I kind of needed to make the Spinosaurus Torvus seem intimidating, I think I killed them all. I think I killed Diane off a bit too early. Um, and Wade was a red herring that kind of nobody really seemed to get or care for. So if I had to change one series, it would probably be Series 3, but I there's a lot of things from that series I would still keep. I definitely keep the Spinosaurus Torvus. I might handle them slightly differently, but I definitely keep them. I think they are one of my more unique ideas. And then his next question is, this one is worded a bit strange, but what I think he's trying to say is if any of the PV characters could talk, like in Toadie or something like that, which ones would I choose? Well, technically, I've already done this with 3 of them in the Halloween horror. In fact, 4 of them actually, including Gigabyte. So yeah, 5 if you count the Koolasuchus who can only say Kool-Aid. But yeah, if I was to do any more, potentially in a sequel to that, maybe one of the Trikes, just because I didn't do much with them in the main series outside of Series 2 and the last Triceratops special. Maybe... Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think of others. I wouldn't want to use any Series 4 characters, I think, because they're kind of already pretty relevant in that. I'd probably want to use characters from the earlier series. I could put Hatchet in, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. Probably one of the Trikes would be my guess. And then the final one that he asked is, if you got to write or rewrite a Friends Dino Tube series or just any other Dino Tubers series, who would that person be and which series would it be? And what season/episode, if there is one? So I think you can probably guess what the answer is based on my rather harsh comments about Python. Sorry, mate. Which it would be Songbird. Because I really like a lot of the writing in Songbird. In many ways, I actually think Python is a better writer than I am, on balance. And while I think our differences in choices for endings are subjective, there are definitely some bits of Songbird where I just feel like he either had too many characters or the plot was a bit slow, potentially. For the most part, with the exception of Ace's story, and I guess the Raptors and Bruton, all of the other stories kind of went nowhere until episode 7. Well, not nowhere, but they were very slow until episode 7. I still think Songbird is better paced than PV, which I think has the opposite problem of being a bit fast, but it's hard to tell. If there was any scene, it would probably be Felicity's introduction. I wouldn't rewrite it. I think it's written perfectly. I just think if I had made it, maybe I'd have done it with a tripod or tried to keep some of the camera angles a bit more stable and keep the figures in frame a bit better. But I can't really blame him on that because it was one of the first things filmed for Songbird, I believe. Probably also would have given Bruton a more definitive ending because I really didn't like how open-ended that was in the actual series. And I'd have probably given the Carnos more scenes and maybe a more definitive ending. Because I've told Python this to his face. I've said straight up I don't like how that story ended. But again, a lot of that I think is subjective, and you could make an argument for, the endings being perfect as they are, but, The way I've talked this episode a lot, it sounds like I don't like Python, and that's not true. He's actually probably, out of all the people I've met in the DinoTube community, he's probably up there as one of the nicest people I've met. And it's not like I don't like his series either. I've straight up said I think he's a better writer than I am, but hey oh. Anyway, moving on to questions from the community post now. Right. Let's start. I'm gonna start with some questions from Zai's Fantastic Discoveries, aka A Giganticus Productions. What is one thing you're glad you did and one thing you would have liked to have done in every season? One thing I'm glad I did? For season 1, I would say the one thing I'm probably glad I did. Probably casting Gigabyte as the Carnegie Giga and like not choosing another species for series 1. Probably the one thing I would like to have done differently, like I would do differently if I made it now, is probably, well, obviously I'd use modern production quality, like up to the standards of the current stuff, but like I said, I'd probably cut the Eastern Prairie storyline. Maybe not necessarily cut it, but I'd probably make it. I'd try to tie it into the rest of the series somehow. For series 2, the only thing I would really change is maybe the pacing a little bit, like I've already said with the watering hole storyline, the lake storyline. One thing I'm really glad I did, I actually think, is, and this might seem kind of odd because I've said I never really did anything with them after that, the trikes. I think, personally, that they worked really well as herbivorous antagonists. I think they actually, from an ecological perspective, they worked really well. And I haven't seen trikes utilised in the way they were very much, so I'm actually pretty happy with that. And I think the whole, like, sort of passing of the torch between, like, Gigabyte and Serration, that I think I like that concept a lot still. Series 3, my one thing I'm glad I did would be making the Spinosaurus Torvus. Just because I think they're the most unique concept. One thing I would have liked to have done, if I wrote it now, again, I've already said I would have probably kept Diane around a bit, and I feel like Series 3 is kind of where Prehistoric Valley started suffering a bit from the 6-episode format. I kind of sometimes wish, to be honest, that maybe I should have ended the series at Series 3. But I'm hoping Series 4 will be a good definitive ending. For the most part, at least. Again, there may be some specials later on if anything else needs tying up. Are there any speeches you would have liked to have included? One of them's right here, this guy. I didn't get that figure until after I'd finished all of PV, but if I'd had it from the start, you can bet Mastodonsaurus would have been in the series. 1000%. Some other species I kind of wanted to include, but either didn't have figures for or didn't have a good role for, were Sarcosuchus. And then there's some that I wanted to, that have appeared, but I wanted to do more with. For example, Megaraptor, Seats, and Chronosaurus, actually. In fact, I think in general, I would have liked to have done more like non-dinosaur creatures and aquatic stuff and stuff like that. I know you've. Sorry, I missed a question. If you could, are there any changes you could make to the map of Prehistoric Valley? The only thing I think I would change is the name of the Eastern Heath, just because I don't have a heathland right near me, so I just used a patch of heather in the front garden. That's the Eastern Heath, so I'd probably just change it to like Eastern Scrubland, or well, maybe not that because that's also in Songbird, but like Eastern, I don't know, Scrub Plain or Eastern Brush or something. I don't know, something else. Um, I know you've said this is the last season, and that after it ends, you were thinking about doing the occasional special or maybe making another series. Are you still planning to do that? Yes. In terms of specials for PV, that's a bit less certain, but I think I might do one on Terabyte here, just because I don't think a lot of people are really getting her storyline this series, and I feel like maybe she needs a bit more explanation. Find some of her kind of motivations and whatnot, because she does have some pretty clear motivations in my head, but it might not be too clear to the viewers, and she does have a backstory, so that may or may not happen. As for other series, I do have one that's actually being worked on at the moment. It's not started. Well, technically, I filmed something for it, but like, I wouldn't say production has properly started. It's still in the writing stage, but yes, there's another series that will definitely be coming after PV. As for when to expect that, next year sometime, maybe spring next year. Probably before next summer, I think. But that's a bit of a rough guess. What's your favourite period in the Mesozoic? I'm kind of tempted to say Triassic just because it's so weird. Like, there's so much weird and wacky stuff in the Triassic. But I think on balance, I'm going to have to say Cretaceous. Just because it had such a diversity of dinosaurs and stuff. It had some of my favourite groups, like the Carcharodontosaurids and the Spinosaurids. It's when the really big sauropods lived. I think on balance it would have to be Cretaceous, but I am kind of tempted to say Triassic just because it doesn't get talked about enough and there's so much cool stuff from there. How do you feel about every season of Prehistoric Valley? I've kind of done this one already, so I'll sort of skim over it. Series 1, I think, is a decent start, but I might have done it differently if I did it now. Series 2 is the one I think has aged the best, and if I was ever to sort of revisit the concept to any of them, I don't think I'd ever remake any of them, but if I was, Series 2 would be the one I'd be most interested in doing. Series 3 has some of my favourite ideas, but maybe in places it was a bit cluttered with characters. And Series 4 I'm happy with, but I think some of the endings, especially some of the bits that were written quite a while ago, I probably wouldn't have done now. And I do think certain bits of it kind of show that they were a bit rushed. But I'd say I feel fairly good about it so far. Python Movies Productions. What's your favourite installment in the trilogy of life? Ooh, so that's the Walking With series, like Walking With Dinosaurs, Beasts and Monsters. I'm tempted to say Walking With Monsters, I think, just because it's the one I remember the most and I like Paleozoic Life. I think I just hit the desk there, but anyway, yeah, I'm going to go Walking With Monsters, although, to be fair, it is probably the most dated out of all of them, even though it's the most recent one. Mind you, Walking with Dinosaurs has some pretty outdated stuff in it, but yeah. Will you ever include a T-Rex in anything ever at all? Maybe. But I think if I do, I would only do it, I think, if I can think of an interesting way to do it and to have a T-Rex character that's not just the unstoppable giant theropod who takes over and is like the obvious main character that is the only one worth being interested in. Like maybe something like Rex in MI, who's like important, but he doesn't take away from other characters like Blue. I think. I think that's probably what I would do, but that's kind of unlikely. Have you seen the new Toadie episode? Yes, I left a comment on it. And I posted it in Discord saying, hey, look, this is out now. Yeah, of course I've watched it. Micropachycephalosaurus, ? So moving on, these questions are from Primal Films. What's your favourite piece of... Wait, hold on. Yeah, what's your favourite piece of paleo media from this year? So 2025. To be honest, I assume he means like mainstream paleo media, like stuff like Prehistoric Planet and the new Walking with Dinosaurs. Honestly, haven't really watched much. I've only seen the first episode of Walking with Dinosaurs 2025, and I've seen Jurassic World Rebirth fairly recently, if you count that. That's it. Haven't seen Primitive War, haven't seen Prehistoric Planet yet. That's it, so I can't really comment on that. I'd say out of the two, I'd probably say I'd choose Rebirth of all things over. I'd choose a Jurassic Park film over a Walking with Dinosaurs film. That's like, or like episode. That's a sentence I never thought I'd say, but yeah. The one episode of Walking with Dinosaurs 2025 I did watch. Even though Rebirth was a flawed film, in my opinion, it did still have some fun moments and some good bits, and I think I preferred it overall. Who's been your favourite character to write so far? Ooh. Probably either Gigabyte or Sally, just because they're the oldest characters, and so they have the most backstory to dig into. I had some good fun with Frost as well, just because he's a bit of a different character. And Serration has been one of my favourite characters to write, just because she has probably the biggest journey, I guess, over, like, from Series 1 to Series 4. What's your favourite technique to use while filming? That's an interesting one. Just hit the camera there. I guess probably lifting raising the camera off the ground and having the figures like free floating, but with the ground out of shot, like framed against like a background, usually of like trees or something, just because it makes them look a bit bigger, and it also means you're not crouching down so much. And one thing I do a lot, which not many other people do, I've noticed, I quite often have the camera follow the dinosaurs, almost like it's on their back. Like, I might put up some footage of me doing this right now. This is something I don't see a lot of people do that I'm quite fond of. I don't think you can do it too much, but it is something which I do quite often, just when a character's, like, journeying. I find it's a better option than just having them walk past the camera a bunch of times in different locations. Yeah. Next questions are from Giganotoraptor 2014. What is your favourite animated dinosaur movie? Well, technically almost all movies the dinosaurs are animated. But if you mean a film that's fully animated that doesn't have any real like people or backgrounds or anything in it, I haven't seen that many, to be honest. Trying to think of any. Surely I've seen one. I must have. I'm drawing a blank here, I honestly am, and I don't know how. Yeah, I honestly can't think of one. I'm sorry, I don't know really if I have an answer to that. But his next question is, what do I plan to do after PV? So I've already confirmed there is another series that's going to happen alongside potentially some PV specials. So yeah, that series is probably going to be the main focus after Series 4's done. But since that's still like not even begun production yet, I'm just not going to reveal anything much more about it. Yeah. Are you still doing? This is next question is from Shane Moore. Are you still doing Jurassic World: The Game Amphibians only? Yes, I am, and I have been recording it. But I have a massive backlog of footage from that, which I just can't be bothered to edit because I don't have much mental energy right now. And all of that mental energy that is spent on editing kind of has to go towards PV because that's the priority. But I have been playing it and I do have a bunch of footage from that saved, so I can edit through that whenever I get the chance or feel like it. But yeah, so I might just post and put some screenshots up now, like in editing of like some of the stuff that's happened since then, like kind of the point I'm up to at the time of me recording this video, because I've made a lot of progress since I posted the last video of this like ages ago. Stupid Idiot 3000, who is also Cheap Movies Productions, by the way. Why didn't you name the male Neovenator Apollo? That would have been perfect and I'm mad. To be honest, I don't know why I would have. I don't know Greek mythology that well. Is Apollo, like, connected to Artemis somehow? Or also to do with, like, hunting? Because if so, I didn't know that. The only reason why Artemis has her name is I needed a name, and I thought Neovenator needs new hunter, so I just looked up, like, goddess of the hunt or something, because she's female, and that was the first one that came up. Orion has his name because he's named after the constellation Orion, the Great Hunter again, Neovenator, new hunter. Which brings me to the final question, which is from Belinda Surico, and that is, Artemis is the bigger Neovenator and Orion is the small Neovenator, question mark. I mean, that's more of a statement than a question, but alright, I'll answer. Basically, they're about the same size, but this is Orion, the Vitaechelantosaurus. This is Artemis, the collector figure. There's your answer in terms of which is which, because several others have been confused, I think, about which one is which. So yeah, with that, that's all the questions. If you have any more, please leave them down below in the comments and I'll just answer them by like text or whatever. Goodbye.